Senate Committee on Retirement to order. This is Tuesday, June 13th. And Senator Harbin, how about lead us in a word of prayer, please?
You got me? Thank you. Okay, let's pray. Lord, we thank you for just the opportunities that you give us. We ask, oh Father, for wisdom and discernment as we deal with the business of the state of Georgia, and that we represent our citizens well in their best interest and those that serve us. Thank you for your love and your faithfulness to us, and we'll thank you in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, first we're going to hear from Senator Albers. We'll let you, is that Senate Bill 328? And your LC number 43283-4ER.
I believe that is the one, yes, sir.
All right. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate the honor to present this bill in front of you. A little background on the POAB, which is the Police Officer Annuity Benefit Fund. It's one of the most successful ones, not just in the state, but in the nation. It is led by someone who is no stranger to anyone in this room, Mr. Homer Bryson behind me. We have a great team of people, and the sole purpose of this is without using state tax dollars, let me repeat that, without using state tax dollars, we have a pension fund that helps our post-certified police officers in all corners of the state. It doesn't matter where you live, each one of them, as long as they maintain their post credentials and pay their dues, can participate in this fund. While it looks like there's a lot of pages here, it's a lot of technical cleanup, actually. So you'll see a lot of things strucken out. We're just updating and modernizing some language. But the bill does do a couple of basic things. It improves some benefits for members, which I'll talk about. The members themselves pay a $25 a month dues. They're going to increase their own dues to $35. And the goal with all these updates is then for you to hopefully bless it today to go for an actuary study, which we believe will actually come back very favorable based on the modeling that Mr. Bryson and his team have already done. So you'll see under the administrative changes very briefly that this is in line with the definitions we use for the post council, which is police officer standard and training. It changes other job titles and duties of the board, but again, just making it clean and consistent with what we do in other places. The other thing it does is it matches the service requirements for folks who can buy back years of pension that didn't perform from 5 to 7 years. Continuing on, the cost will be calculated for them to buy back years at what the full actuary cost would be. As you know, Mr. Chairman and committee members, we have a shortage of those who are willing to serve in law enforcement over the last several years especially. And what this is going to do is allow those that have vested in the plan for 30 years to be able to receive their pension, but also remain employed in the public safety arena while they get their POE pension. It doesn't penalize them for coming back to work when more than ever we need good, experienced, and tenured officers to serve. The death benefits today are $3,500 with restrictions. That will upgrade to $5,000 without restrictions. Similarly, the line of duty deaths will increase from $5,500 with restrictions to $10,000 without restrictions. One last change to the fund will be that if someone decides to opt out of membership to the fund, that they will get all their dues paid back to them in full that they put into the fund. So again, we believe that this will be a favorable analysis from the actuaries with the increase of the $10 per month. This is run for our officers, by officers, and the folks engaged, again, have one of the best plans in the nation. And I'd ask that you would give us a favorable consideration to go into the next part of the process, and I would yield for any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from any board member? All right, Senator Harbin.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Senator Alberts. Question, the buyback was mentioned, so someone can be in it, as I understand it, and they can pay back if they were not there for the number of years. They can buy those years back. Can you kind of give me
yeah, there's 2 points there. So if they were not involved in the fund, they can go back and buy back up to 7 years, 5 to 7 years, but they have to pay the full actuary cost of what it would be at that time. It's not just 5 years times the monthly fee. It's what would have accrued during that time. But then if somebody was in the system for, say, 11 years and they decided they wanted to opt out, they could opt out and get their dues back.
Okay.
We would certainly hope they would never do that because it's a pretty good return on investment. So.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
See, Chairman Tillery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Alwards. I just got a couple of questions. Do we know, and maybe this is something procedurally that I'm out of order on, we go for the actuarial study after voting through this meeting today. So is that when we would know how many people are eligible now and how many people would be eligible in the future, or would that be a fair question to ask now, or is that something that go later on?
If I could bring up Mr. Bryson to give me an assist, yes.
Sure.
And using round numbers, and good morning, Mr.
Good morning.
Chairman. How are you? And using round numbers, we've got about 14,000 active members in the fund now. We're paying a monthly pension to close to 8,000 individuals. We're paying out $4.65 million a month in retirement pensions. And again, this does not change the eligibility into the fund, so we don't see that this would make a huge change in what our membership status is.
So and then after the actuarial study, is that when we find out how many would be covered by new, or is there a report that comes later that tells us that? I'm just wondering from a procedure standpoint.
I'm not sure that this will change our numbers greatly. I think really what we're looking to do here is clean up this code was put in place in the 50s, and it's been added to for decades, and we're cleaning up and modernizing the code basically, and we've changed some of the application process, sort of streamline that, and we're looking to simplify our death benefit and to also streamline our buyback plan. Our current buyback plan is you have to join and be a member for 5 years. Then you can buy back up to 5 years, but you have to work however long you buy back, and it does not count towards vesting. And so what we want to do, and what we've heard from our members is, once they join, they would prefer to be able to buy back day one and just pay the full actuarial cost, and then it count towards vesting.
Gotcha. Can I ask one more question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
One of the things that I've heard, y'all probably got the emails too, is about some disparities about maybe how we treat our state officers versus county officers and others in some of these plans with death benefits. I know that your plan is more than death benefits, and I know that also your plan is self-funded essentially by its members and is different. But one of the things I might be looking at is seeing what the change might be if we had to make that death benefit be equal across all those who are in public safety. So if that's something we can look at and see if how that would be affected by the actuarial numbers, I'd love to see that. If it doesn't work, I completely understand, because your members are funding it themselves. It's not being funded with state general funds. But I'm going to be curious about that as it moves forward through this session.
And thank you. I'd like to add to that, because I'm passionate, as you are equally. Every department is different, right? Whether it be a state, city, county, or even school system for a safety resource officer. So each one of them have their own benefits, but there is also a state benefit that's separate and a federal benefit, especially if it's a line of duty death. The question that I think we should look at a little further, and I'd love to speak with you offline, is states like Florida and Oregon and some other areas have taken that a little bit further. Really for the non-line of duty benefits. And the reason for that is the rate for someone in public safety to have heart disease is 3.5 times greater than an average person. And many of you know Lance LaRusso, who's really one of the leading attorneys to represent public safety members throughout the state of Georgia. And I will quote his statistics, that the average person in their life will have a post-traumatic stress event, right? We think of PTSD mostly from our combat soldiers. We hope it doesn't get to the D, but the average human being, all of us, will have 4 of those throughout a lifetime, a post-traumatic stress event. A combat veteran can have as many as 100. A public safety person experiences an average of 700 in their lifetime. 700. So if you think about what that means to their physical body, to their mental capabilities, to what it impacts to their families, et cetera, they see 3 bad things, they have to go to the next call immediately. And it's the next day, it's the next shift, it's the next whatever. So the things we do to help support them and serve them, and this Senate has led the way with the peer support group and all the other work we did, I think we still have to do more of those. So thank you for your question. I'd love to work with you on that.
Okay, Senator Harvin.
Sure. I was just understanding, as I see the summary, the options, of course, are a life settlement, a joint settlement, or a joint settlement with a reduced monthly benefit. I don't see in the summary sheet that we have the life insurance side of it, and I'm assuming I'll give you 2 questions. If someone has a life annuity, once they die, that annuity goes away. They're not joint. They're single life only. But there's a death benefit also that goes with that. I don't see the death benefit, at least a number. Is that number based upon their account value, or how is that determined?
Make sure I understand your question. Are you referring to the death benefit?
Death benefit, yes. Yes.
The death benefit will either go to a spouse or an estate.
How is
of
it
that
calculated
person.
was my question.
Well, currently, there's a lot of caveats that go with it, depending on how long you remember, how much you've received in retirement benefits. We're wanting to do away with that and just have it, if you are a member in good standing and you pass away, you've got those $2 amounts certain.
Okay. So rather than some calculation on the account value that you're pulling down, it's going to be a fixed amount as far as that.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else wish to speak against the bill? Hearing none, what is the desire of the committee?
Move to pass.
Have a move to pass? Senator McLaren?
Can I clarify, is that motion for?
An actuary. Actuary.
Okay.
To move it forward to an actuary.
If that is the motion, then I second that motion.
So we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. So carry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Appreciate your unwavering support of all of our police officers and sheriffs throughout the state.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Senate Bill 322 from Senator Walker. He was not able to be here. Do we have someone that can present that bill? You want to present it, Tarika? We'll stand by just a moment. Can you present this bill for Senator Walker since he's not here? I know you're excited about this.
Mr. Chairman, I am excited about this. I'm more excited to see all of you interrupting your summer on our behalf, so thank you for that. I am Terry Norris. I'm a few things. You all know me as the Executive Director of the Georgia Sheriff's Association, but also happen to be the Secretary Treasurer of the Sheriff's Retirement Fund of Georgia. This is a public retirement fund, of course, in code. It's created for the elected sheriff. There are no state funds that contribute to the fund. Presently, there are 199 retirees with an average monthly pension of $2,713.80. So we're asking in this bill, Senator Walker, I should say, is asking in this bill to make several increases in the current, some of the current details of the bill. Prior service, presently you can buy up to 8 years prior service if you've had military. You can buy up to 4 years military and up to 4 years of law enforcement experience. That current buyback is $37.50. We're asking for that buyback to be increased to $65. The second thing we're asking for, dues. They pay, the sheriffs pay dues monthly into the fund. Current dues, all this hasn't been changed in many years. Current dues are $45. We're asking that to be increased to $65. Presently, there is no collection of any fees on pre-adjudicated cases. You know, in the past 10 or 12 years, this General Assembly and our governor has agreed and said that we should do things to help people avoid conviction. And there's been a lot of pre-adjudicated cases where they've been allowed, these defendants have been allowed to do other things rather than be convicted. When that happened, a lot of the fine revenues that were going into our sheriff's retirement fund, and likewise the peace officer annuity and benefit fund that you just spoke of, there was a lot of fees that were lost. So we're asking to do something similar to what you all did for the peace officer annuity and benefit fund a few years ago. I think theirs was $5 on each case, on these pre-adjudicated cases. Excuse me. In this particular bill, we're asking for a $2 fee on each of those cases. On the service of civil papers, the current fee that's collected on the service of papers by sheriff's offices is $1. We're asking that to be increased to $5. We're asking that if there's a felony conviction of an elected sheriff, then related to the performance of duties as a sheriff, that the sheriff's retirement board be allowed to consider removing those benefits from that particular person. That takes place, of course, later on. It does not affect any sitting sheriff. And finally, really, the origination of the bill, Chairman Tillery, had to do with the death benefit. And we originally asked, the current death benefit for the sheriff's family in the case of the death of the sheriff or the retired sheriff is $15,000, and we're asking that to be increased to $35,000. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have to say about it at this point. Again, we appreciate your time this morning and allowing us to interrupt your summer break.
All right, for the record, this is Senate Bill 322, LC number 432823. Is there any questions from any member? Let's see. Number 13.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good to see you.
Thanks, sir.
Senator Harbour and I were calling it it's got that reunion feel, right? But it's a mild reunion feel, right? 'Cause it's only a couple months. So.
We need to ease back into it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Got a question about the new $2 off of pretrial diversion. Mm-hmm. So my understanding is under statute, that's a fee that the local jurisdiction imposes, and it's a maximum of $300 under that subsection F. Is that your understanding?
Honestly, I'm not familiar with that part of the current law. It's outside the realm of this particular bill, I believe.
Okay, well, right. I mean, as is so often our convenience, the bills or the statutes we cross-reference don't show up in full text in the bill, so we have to do a little Googling. But this is OCGA 151880, so I'm looking at lines 76 through 87 of this bill. And it's referring to the fee collected there, and subsection F says the prosecuting attorney shall be authorized to assess and collect from each offender who enters the program a fee not to exceed $300 for the administration of the program. And then it says any fee collected under the subsection shall be made payable to the general fund of the political subdivision in which the case is being prosecuted. So right now the local government gets whatever that fee is by statute, and this would be a carve out. I guess, so you've sort of half answered my question already by saying it's, outside of the realm of this bill, but I guess I am curious about how this works in practice. I mean, do we have any information about whether local jurisdictions are already maxing out that fee at $300? Do we know if on average they're doing lower? Do we know which jurisdictions have maxed out the $300 fee?
My guess is they're all maxing it out, because I think the concept behind that 300, as I recall that conversation now, was to help further offset the cost of running the accountability courts and other costs related to that local jurisdiction after the court has imposed whatever those provisions are, to pay the cost of dealing with that particular situation. That's only a guess.
Right. If you and I had to make a guess together today, I think we'd arrive at the same guess.
Yes, sir.
Is there a representative of counties or cities that can speak to this change? Were they informed about the change? I mean, I'm just curious what their position is or how they would explain the use of those funds.
We have not talked to them. Again, we model this after current law related to the POAB fund.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I guess my two main concerns with this provision are, number one, I'm always opposed to trying to fund government on the backs of people who go through the criminal legal system in the ways of fines and fees. I'm generally a no vote on that. And so any risk that this type of legislation would expand that practice is going to be concerning to me. And the second concern is the local governments, because, putting to the side my sort of crazy liberal or philosophical objection to the use of fines and fees in that way, if the local governments are trying to use those fines and fees in productive ways, to your point, maybe for accountability courts, that sort of thing, that's at least a discussion that I would want to see had before we make any changes to the allocation of those funds. So that's my hang up, but I just, I respect the goal, obviously, immensely. And, I understand, too, that prices have gone up since the 1950s and 60s when we're writing some of this legislation. So
yes, sir.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Let's see, Senator? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Just quickly, this new code section, can you kind of elaborate on this? If a sheriff is convicted of a felony, if you can go over that with me again. And then the other thing, I know these are retirees, and the active members in agreement with raising their own membership dues from $45 to $65, $20?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am. So to the other part, your first question dealt with the provisions about convicted sheriffs who are convicted of felony offenses that are related to the operation of the office of sheriff. That's what it, in a nutshell, that's what it is. So there could be multiple examples of what that might mean. But it is holding the elected sheriff responsible for his or her behavior. And if they use their position as sheriff to undermine the public trust, to steal from the office, to do those things that would constitute a felony, then the Sheriff's Retirement Fund Board could take action to eliminate the payment of all or part of those later retirement benefits. And now that is a general response, and it's pretty broadly written if you see that as well. So yes, ma'am.
Senator Tillery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Three things. One, sort of in jest, I thought Mr. Vaughn might want to speak for the counties if he'd like to say anything on their behalf. Does look like not today. That time has passed. That time has passed. Two things though that I would like to address as this comes back up again. It looks like the way it's drafted that if a conviction on the felony provision that Senator Davenport brought up earlier, if it's flipped, that then the back payments are made with interest to the person whose conviction was vacated.
If it's appealed, yes, sir.
But it looks, and I may be reading this wrong, it looks like during the appeal process, the person has their funds back. Then if the appeal reinstates the sentence, that we then go back to get those monies again. Just from a practical standpoint, it's been my experience that those funds are no longer there when you go back. So that might be something that the fund wants to look at just practically.
Actually, Chairman, they did talk about that, and they did recognize that as they were discussing this. And honestly, if there was a way to strengthen this particular provision, which likely would not affect the actuary if we get that moved along for an actuary study, they certainly would welcome any suggestions on ways to improve that particular provision if it didn't otherwise damage or hurt the progression of the bill.
Also acknowledge the American standard of innocence until proven guilty. I guess you're proven guilty then flipped. I don't know how we would remedy that, but I bring that up for your consideration and thoughts as we move forward. The last is, Mr. Chairman, I don't know the procedure again on when we refer this out. Do we have to refer the bill out in whole, or can we refer the bill out with questions for the actuary to essentially bring back in parts? How does that work? And is there anyone in the room that can answer that question for me?
I can answer that.
Okay.
Would you come up and identify yourself, please? Terry, if you will read her Miranda rights to her, please.
Have the right to remain silent. Good morning. I'm Carol Schwinney with the Department of Audits.
Okay, thank you.
And with regards to your question, Chairman Tillery, what we can do is we would have to submit the bill as written or as perfected if there are certain components of the bill that you want to remove that you're not interested in studying.
Okay.
But we do want to make sure that the first actuarial investigation that comes out is the highest cost.
It's the worst, right.
That you're going to have, because any bill that is amended later, if the cost of the bill increases, then the bill would automatically be dead.
Gotcha.
So we do want to make sure that if there are pieces of the bill that you are looking at costing, I would recommend that you include them in the bill.
So if there's revenue enhancers in the bill, if we wanted to make worst case scenario, we should strike those provisions out, knowing that the report we get back from you would be the worst possible, and any revenues we added back, for instance, like Senator McLaurin's comment about the issue he had with fees for accountability courts.
Mm-hmm.
We would want to strike that provision, knowing that if we added that $2 back, it simply makes the feasibility and the dollar health, I'm saying that in a poor way, better.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, also, though, I would say that if the Senate is interested in having some additional information that's outside of the words in the bill, you can submit a request to the state auditor's office, and we specifically identify in what you would like the actuary to study, specific to like maybe a secondary question, and they can come back with that information at the same time the
Can I ask a
actuarial
follow-up on?
study is
Can I ask a
submitted.
follow-up on that, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly.
If, though, that secondary question costs more money, have we killed the bill for the 2-year cycle?
Yes,
Okay. So we want to make this the highest cost possible.
that is correct. But
Gotcha.
the secondary question is just a secondary question, and it's not necessarily bill specific. It's just information for you
Gotcha.
all to gather information. So if you all were wanting to pull out, for example, the $2 fee,
Right.
but you wanted that information, you could request the actuary study that specifically, so you have that information up front as you're seeing the initial cost of the original actuarial investigation.
And Carol, we're about to put you on the spot. Is that your recommendation on what we should do if we don't want to kill for the purposes of not killing the bill?
I mean, it would be helpful. It's just a matter of whether or not the Senate is willing to pay for the additional costs related to the extra work of the actuary. Because the cost of the actuarial investigations are a cost of the legislature.
Okay.
Any other questions of the expert witness?
You understand what that means we have to do?
Okay, Senator Harbin.
Thank you, sir. Just looking at this is, of course, we're looking for the actuarial study, and the last comment is that my question would be, is that the fees that are being increased for members versus the fees that are collected, what percentage is that currently in place? From a standpoint, is it 90, 80, 90, 10? What's our percentage, or do we know? Well, currently, you've got a membership cost, and then you've got a fee that you're charging, that would be charged for $2 each. Is that new, or are we just currently member only? Are we still getting $1 from the court cost? Is that what I understand?
There's fines and fees that are already being collected.
Collected, okay.
Yes, sir.
But percentage-wise, is it 90% coming from the members and 10% coming from fees?
I would say there's a higher percentage coming from fees than members, but I don't know what the percentage
Okay.
is.
But through the courts.
Through the courts? You don't know the number off the top of your
Off
head?
the top of
okay.
my head, no. But
Okay.
actually, I can pull the actuarial study
Okay.
and find that information out for
Okay.
you and send it to you.
But I understand Senator Tillery, what he was saying is that we may, if I understand, we may want to amend this in committee to deal with that issue so that if it comes back, it doesn't die in this session. Am I correct?
What I was saying was that you want to make sure that the bill that you send to the actuary initially is going to be the highest cost that would be incurred. And then once you get that information back, you can amend the bill so that the cost decreases and that bill could stay live.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Chairman Tiller.
Ready to make a motion when you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Legislative Council, did you want to weigh in on the page 4? There were some things that Brad had picked up.
I think we
Wanted to bring that out on page 4. Line 89. Sure. What is your number down there? Or if you'll press a button. There you go.
It was brought to my attention in line 89, where it references the Secretary Treasurer under subsection A of this code section shall fail to remit. Because we added subsection B in there, we would want this to apply, kind of these penalties and deadlines to apply to both A and B, the new subsection for $2. If we're going to remove that, it would be moot at this time. But if we're going to keep that section 3 in the bill, then we wouldn't want to add or B after A in line 89.
Okay. Did y'all catch that? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, Chairman Tillery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we send LC 432823 with sections 3 and 4 stricken forward for an actuarial study, and defer to the expert witnesses again. I think I've struck the provisions that were additional fees, but for the member contributed fees that Mr. Norris has already spoken to have been accepted by the members.
I'll second that entire motion.
You want to repeat the motion? That's okay. Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
And Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to explain why I did that if the members need to, but if they understand, I won't. Do you understand? Okay, good.
Do you need explanation, Terry?
I would like some, but we can do it offline. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't mind doing it off on the record since it's a bill. They'll probably, Mr. Norris, what the striking that does is it makes the actuarial study come back at the highest possible amount, so that if we later add those fees back in, that it lowers the actuarial value, which keeps the bill alive. However, if we were to strike those provisions later on after the actuarial study, we will have killed the bill for the 2-year cycle. So it keeps it alive if there were changes that were made about those two matters.
Understood that part. Thank
Okay.
you. We're of the opinion that it would meet actuarial standards with those in there, but we certainly respect the decision of the committee.
Yeah, happy to talk to you more about it offline.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion, any other questions? Was there anyone here that wanted to speak for or against this bill? Hearing no other discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So carry. So now to present this bill for actuary as amended. I have a motion on that.
I'll move to pass.
Have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. So carry. So this one will be moving for actuary too.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other business before this committee? If not, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.
So we have that information. I was going to mention that.